Welcome back to KickBack. We are in the evening portion now of our 12-hour marathon. And I'm your host, Brianna, and I'm joined with Ben. And now we have Jan and Emelyn with us.
Yeah, so thank you guys, first off, for joining us in year 2 of Project KickBack. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start with you guys telling us a bit about yourselves and what made you want to be involved with KickBack? Mm-hmm. Either one of you, doesn't matter.
I'll go first. Well, my name is Emelyn, and the reason why I wanted to be involved in this is because I want to be one of those people that stands up for what mental health experiences are like, and basically, you know, I want to have a voice to be a part of ending the stigma behind mental health concerns. There's a lot of differentiations where how people talk about mental health as it is an issue, but mental health is just like physical health. What can we do together as a community to come together and talk about it? It's normal. Everybody goes through this. So I just wanted to have the opportunity to speak up about my experiences, as well as what it looks like in the community where I work now, which is social rehabilitation. Yep.
And how about yourself?
I have been blessed with a journey and a path of healing that I didn't expect. I never expected. And along that path, I have been very fortunate enough to work with an awful lot of people who do suffer on a regular basis from an awful lot of very difficult circumstances, either in their lives or interpersonally. And I'm involving myself in this process, in this communication, in this dialogue, to sell hope. It doesn't matter what kind of flavor it comes in my opinion. I'll just hold up a great big platter of hope and sell it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you are a peer worker?
I'm an intake and support worker. That's my title. But I am a consumer. I'm a person of a lived experience who has been in the mental health system since the age of 12. Hospitals, rehabilitation, whatnot. And so I have the good experiences as well as not so good experiences. But basically, the patterns of breakdowns and breakthroughs and continuous breakdowns and breakthroughs has led me to where I am today. And it has taken quite a bit of support. It's from therapists to counselors to doctors to family members, friends. And the problem that I see nowadays is because of the stigma, people isolate themselves quite a bit.
Right.
We are embarrassed to talk about it. It's like it's a problem not to be normal because everybody else is handling life, you know. But it isn't. Everybody goes through a period of stress. Could it be severe or not in a period of all their lives? So I guess for me, it's been a constant experiences throughout my life that has led me where I am today, to where I can say, this is what I went through, this is what it was like, and how can I help you? And the isolating piece is the one that is really detrimental. And so in my workplace, what we do is social rehabilitation, and we invite people in the community to join us. It's a free service, there's no charge. We basically provide a lot of fun activities, trips, things like that, and because, you know, some people may have an issue financially, we do accommodate those needs so we can get them integrated back in the community so they can, you know, start working on their mental health much better. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've been there, done that, so I want to provide that support for others as well. Yeah, so it runs through Brampton, but we also offer services Mississauga, Etobicoke, Dufferin as well. So it's so far, you know, it's gotten to 350 plus members in all different areas, and I wish to see something like this in other communities as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it sounds like the social rehabilitation piece is kind of premised on those interactions to kind of remove a bit of that isolation piece. Mm-hmm. I guess for either of you, I guess what's the biggest hurdle from going from struggling maybe with something with mental health and isolating yourself? Again, a lot of people assume no one else knows what they're going through. What's the biggest hurdle from going from that piece to seeking support, no matter what that support might look like?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that takes courage, eh?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the stigma is weird, right? Because if you go skiing and you break your leg and get a cast on your leg, everybody will sign it and they'll bring you casseroles, right? You know, and they'll come by for a visit and, you know, bring some whatever it is that your favorite, whatever it is, right? But if something happens to you where you do not feel like you can leave the house for whatever reason, right? It could be anything from agoraphobia to any kind of a phobia or anxiety, depression, whatever it is. You know, nobody's coming over to sign your cast,
No.
right? But what we can do is we can provide the circumstances under which people feel comfortable enough, it's safe enough to share what they're going through and take that step. It takes an awful lot of courage for someone to say in an environment, you know, superimpose the model of this whole social media presence that we have. It takes an awful lot of courage for people to come forward and say, I need help. And, you know, to get out of your living room, you know, with the curtains drawn and you're crying, to go to the point where you're able to talk with somebody else you've probably never met about things that you don't think you should share with anybody. Like anybody who takes that step, kudos to you, man. Kudos to you, because you're getting up and you're doing something for you, something you need for you, right? And that, you know, I'd encourage anybody, if they're at that step, to take that step and involve themselves with organizations like your own, and to, even though it's so difficult to do, try to connect.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it's wrong, the structure in the community, for example, if something is wrong with you, you go to your doctor, you feel like you need help, they'll refer you to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is there to provide medication. The medication is there to take the edge off what's going on with you at the moment. And then a lot of times people just stop there. But just taking the edge is not everything. There needs therapy, counseling, socialization, spirituality, and all these things that are very essential for your well-being that we are not taught, you know. But now I think with the social media aspect and everything, we have the tools that we can reach out. We can go to YouTube, we can Google, all these things. And it really comes down to the thoughts in our heads. You know, whatever we think is going to cause an emotion, and that emotion is going to cause us to feel a certain way. So where are these places or structures in place in our community that can help us rehabilitate in a way that it's holistic besides our medication? So a lot of people get stuck in the cycle of medication and going through the motions because they're not aware of these things. And I think there needs to be like a change in the future to provide these services in order to promote, you know, a much healthier well-being in general.
Yeah. I find it an awful lot. It's almost laughable. You know, you may have heard friends or family or whoever describe their behavior after they had a night of partying or drinking or whatever the case may be. They've gone a little bit too far, ate too much, drank too much, whatever it is. And everybody knows when they're hungover what they need.
Right.
Not what they want, what they need. They know how to treat themselves well. Oh, no more alcohol for me, or no more whatever for me. No more food for me, no more cake for me, whatever it is. I'm just going to rest. Well, that's key. I'm just going to drink water. Well, that's important too, right? I'm going to drink good food. Now, you're right. You're so right. To take the edge off, however that is orchestrated within a person or a family group or whatever it is, there's so much more that can happen after the worst of the suffering is over. When you can actually connect with somebody else and you can share your story. I don't often share my story. I did it a few times, but it triggers people. They don't like it. They don't like to hear the history of what happened to me. But suffice it to say, as a kid, I suffered an awful lot at the hands of two different people. And what it did was it taught me that I don't count. I don't matter. I'm not important. I don't. What I want is not what everybody wants, and I should be a tool, basically. Okay. So when that gets into your head, that thought pattern of I don't matter, I'm not important, nobody will miss me, that kind of a thing. Well, my goodness. If that keeps repeating inside your head and you don't get positive reinforcement from other people, that say you do matter, you are important, you are beautiful, you are talented. If you don't believe that inside your heart, and you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at yourself and you don't think very highly of yourself, it is such an incredibly difficult pattern to break unless you get the chance to open up. Sure, you're right. Taking the edge off with medication is one thing, but then either, there's so many different therapies that are good for people. I mean, if you watch the previous, how many hours of this program?
I think we're on hour 9.
Yeah,
Nine?
hour 9.
I think we're hour 9.
If you watch the previous 9 hours of the program, you'll see different outlets and people who take just about every example possible and blossom and turn into something beautiful, right? We need that. I think our society is calling out and crying out for that real, tangible connection with people.
Yeah, this is something Russell Brand, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the actor slash, he talks about the revolution of the consciousness, right? So it's about changing the way we think. It's about being there for one another. It's about this holistic view of how can we love ourselves more so it's not so difficult to move forward. And a lot of us have to go through a lot of breakdowns in order to reach a breakthrough. And we learn something from each experience. And I completely relate to the self-worth part. Like I experienced many years of abuse sexually from the age of 3 until I was 11. And it was terrible to come from South America to immigrate to Canada, completely not knowing the language, the culture, and try to fit in there. And then that caused me to be a part of the mental health system as a child, but everything was medication. Every psychologist or psychiatrist that I spoke to would tell me my story back all the time. And I felt completely hopeless. It was only after I had my children, I have a 10 and 11-year-old, that I had to care for them and look for their future for me to realize, what is it that I want for them? How much do I love them? And why can I love myself the same way that I'm loving them?
There you go. Yeah.
And this is where my growth began, right? And now when I see people that are in the same position or similar positions where I was, I can say, hey, I get it. Let's sit down and meet your level and see how we can solve this, or solution-focused ideas, consistency, practice and things like that. It's not just about medicine. And there's nothing wrong with you. Everybody suffers through something similar one way or another, right?
And I think we evolve as individuals, so how we heal and take care of ourselves also needs to evolve, right? So what might work last year might be different today, or what might be beneficial to one person is not another, right? And being able to explore some of those things as well. And one thing we had talked about before we came on, you were talking about the peer support piece, and I think that's really interesting, especially those connections and the value of maybe having someone that can kind of relate to what you're going through. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but
yeah. So, for example, like I said, when you see a medical professional, they're meeting you at this level with all their knowledge, and you're right here. And sometimes it's hard to relate. It's hard to disclose. While you're talking, they're making notes, and it feels almost like a tension in judgment kind of experience. But when you're talking to a peer support, which is a person with lived experience, so there's this place called Teach in Mississauga, Halton, who are very focused on peer support, and they explained it this way. Let's say you're stuck in a hole, right? Everybody at the top of the hole is trying to reach your hand, but a peer support worker goes down with you in the hole and sits with you. And when you're ready to come out, they'll come out with you. So this is what it's like. It's, it's that partnership, that common knowledge of what it is to be human and how normal it is to suffer, but suffering is a choice. You can change that, So it's having that connection, and it comes from a root of love, I think, as a human, in their human condition. And how are we going to change ourselves into better people? I think it's a matter of unity and understanding at the end of the day. Yeah.
I love that whole analogy.
Yeah.
That was really impactful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So what changes have you seen since your experiences up until now working in the system? Like, what would you say the biggest change you've seen is?
I think the biggest change is engagement. Let's say if a member, because it's non-medical, we don't call them clients, we call them members of the organization. Whenever they join, they're going through a period in their life where they're isolated. Some of them don't want to join. They've been just referred. So I'm like, oh, I'm doing this because my doctor said, and blah, blah. But when they start coming out to activities, you see the change, that just social aspect. Some of them just sit down and don't even talk very much, but just having that different experience visually, seeing other people's faces, hearing other people's voices, seeing a community getting together, and everybody has similar experiences, so you don't feel alone. And that part of not feeling alone is what makes people start changing into a better version of themselves. And the way that we work it is we don't design our programs. They tell us what they want, and according to what they want, we create the programs. So if they want to play bingo, then we make sure we put bingo in there. If we want karaoke, if they want writing workshops or trips to certain areas, we make sure that we listen to them. Listening is such an important piece, and a lot of us forget, right?
Oh, and the right kind of listening, too.
Exactly.
I mean, you can look somebody in the eye, and they'll be able to feel it and sense it if you're in the other room. Right? If you're actively listening to somebody, you'll be able to exhibit all the micro expressions. Something that you can't learn from a screen. You can't learn it on your phone or on a TV. You have to be in front of another live human being to get that dynamic, right? So the active listening part is key, has always been key for me, because I have a tendency to pay very, very close attention to people and detail. And if any of the parts or pieces are missing, that don't quite make sense, or if somebody's hesitating or breathing too heavy or too hard or too long, or keep shifting their glance or shifting their position or whatever it is, it's not a match made in heaven, you know what I mean? Either you connect with somebody on a deeper level or you do not.
Right.
So when you are attempting to get into the whole and to listen, to sit beside somebody, even if it's just in silence, like so many times that has been the case, somebody just needed somebody to sit there with them.
Exactly.
Didn't need to say anything, just be there.
Yeah,
right?
just be present.
Yeah. Those moments, I mean, it's the chance meeting with strangers on a park bench. You know, you're sitting there, you never met this person before in your life, and you start telling your story, and suddenly a light bulb turns on. And it's that step, right? It's that next step in your progression of who you can be, a better or happier you or whatever. But up until that point, you never thought you'd say those words out loud, and they just came out loud because there was safety.
Yeah.
You're never going to see the person again. You don't know who they are, and there's no chance of repercussions. And then you can be honest. Well, guess what happens when you're honest? Truth comes out, and you actually get to lighten your load.
I think that's a great point to end on, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Jan and Emelyn. This was some great insight, and I love that we ended on the listening piece, because I think those are things that we don't, that's one of the basic things we can do as human beings, and we don't always do that the best.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.